Welcome to a bit of a rebrand for my channels, both on YouTube and Twitch, as I refocus my energy on tabletop RPGs and try to make it as a professional game master. Wish me luck with that. I do have some lovely reviews. I'm on this service called startplaying.games. There's links to that. One of them is to my GM profile. You can see my reviews there. If you're interested in having me run a game for you for money, because I need the money, please look into it. I only have a couple of games right now, but I'm hoping to open up a whole bunch more tables. I'm also going to hopefully be doing a lot more content, not just live streams, but also recorded videos. I've got a game. I'm going to just kind of hold it up here for a second, but I've got a better camera shortly. Penumbra City, a World of Harrow game. And I'm going to be taking a look at that. We've got a little Penumbra City. I've got a D20 just in case we need it. Let's start off with Penumbra City. I got this from a Kickstarter a while ago, actually. Haven't had a chance to really play it other than to take a quick look. One of the character classes here are the Fungalians, who are basically street poet berserkers who take magical mushrooms to basically go berserk, and they look like characters from A Clockwork Orange. I dig that. It is a vibe, and for those of you who've been following for a while and who know me from the Fandible podcast, which, by the way, fandible.com, if you want to see what I am like as a player and as a GM, Fandible, FANDIBLE.com is the place to go. There is literally decades of audio there. Most of it pretty okay. This game reminds me a lot of one that we started with, which is Unhallowed Metropolis. It's got some similar vibes while still being its own complete separate world. It's a sort of post-apocalyptic urban fantasy, fallen London kind of thing. So let's leaf through the book and take some notes as we go. Penumbra City, a World of Harrow game. I haven't done a lot of research previously. We're literally just going through this book now. It sounds like the World of Harrow might be an established thing somewhere else. I've read a little bit of the setting, and there's definitely a lot more beyond just Penumbra City. It is addressed if there's a game line or other stuff, but that's something we can look into for later. But for now, let's continue. So let's see. Take a quick credits here. It looks like this game was assigned by, and forgive me, I'm going to try, but I'm probably going to just absolutely butcher this. But looks like it was designed by Inman Neruin. I'm not quite sure. I'm pronouncing it both in Spanish and English, and probably both are wrong. Anyway, designed by Inman Neruin. Illustrations by Robin Savage. Good job. That illustration of the Fungalians really caught my attention and made me want to know more about the game. Margaret Killjoy for world design. Cool. Then the rest of our credits here. If you are interested in this book, it is available from tangledwilderness. So let's go ahead. All right. So we've got our credits, we got everything else. So let's read through the introduction. I'm going to read through the introduction a bit because they do a pretty good job. I've been trying to reword this, and I will eventually for my video, because I don't want to just read out what's on the book necessarily. But also at the same time, what's on the book is good. What's in the book, it's good stuff. So let's go ahead and read through it a little bit. Right back to Penumbra City, assume a Victorian setting based on the image with less zombies and Unhallowed Metropolis. Yeah, it's definitely got some Unhallowed Metropolis vibes. Not so much with the pollution. You're still living in the undercity covered by shadows, but it's not the same thing. While the countryside is devastated, it's not a plague, it's a war. So let's read through it. There's a black fog that hangs over the city, and it's not as metaphorical as you might hope. It's coal dust. Somewhere up through that smoke, there's a glorious silver city hovering in the sunshine. But don't concern yourself much with the floating quarter, because only the rich and holy will ever see it. Groundside, orphans dig through rubble and trash to scavenge parts to fix their motorcycles. Street poets sell fungus and brawl over territory. Bureaucrats ride black horses to midnight salons where they plot the death of the God King. The graveyard's been squatted by immigrants now for longer than you've been alive, and there's a gang of nihilist ex-Marines intent on blowing up half of everything. This here's your guide to the city. A who's who and a where's where. It's just about everything you need to know to survive your visit, so welcome to Penumbra City. There's plenty to do if you don't mind the dust, the smoke, or the crime, or the monsters. There's the Ireni Federation, a revolutionary force, an anarchist artist collective that has gathered a whole bunch of other groups to form a revolutionary force standing up against the God King. This is a game, by the way, from what I've read so far, it is a worker-forward game. It is definitely, I mean, one of the main factions is, one of the main characters is a labor thug, and there's a lot of talk of anarchism, self-help, mutual aid, and just taking down the structures of power that are oppressing, literally and metaphorically, the Penumbra City that lives under the literal floating city in the sky of silver. Yeah, I mean, this is all just pure planning, pure thought experiment in Minecraft. So here's what I was saying earlier in the stream about this being a World of Harrow game. So this is the world outside the city, that World of Harrow. And we are told that 1,000 years ago, 9 human magicians performed an unknowable, unspeakable act to become living gods. The World of Harrow is their chessboard as they play at war, making and breaking alliances and sending their pieces, people, or monsters that used to be people, into the slaughter. So we hear about these 9 human magicians, but the only one we really care about on a day-to-day basis is Ath. The current war is going badly for Ath, who rules a country of the same name from the silver, a marvelous city that floats above Penumbra City. His church is losing its grip. Food is scarce, disease is rampant, and the revolutionary factions of the city are gaining control of new territory every day. Meanwhile, life continues. Jazz clubs are open all night, and workers and vagrants both gather in the evenings at bars to listen to music and theater transmitted by that new invention, the radio. Smugglers bring food and weapons across blockades by steamship and airship alike. Step pyramids house ancient thinking machines that ponder the universe. Mycomancers find divinity and communion in fungus. Occultists walk the ether. Ornithopters buzz overhead, and soldiers head to the front on trains to drive steam-powered tanks towards the trenches of Hearn, Ath's neighbor and enemy, who fights with vivisected half-human soldiers. I love the setting. This is the world it finds itself in. It literally is a city besieged by war. The countryside is a ruin of bone and shrapnel, and the wildest creatures have moved into the urban decay. Beneath the city is a labyrinth older than the gods themselves, from which strange monsters pour forth to devour the unlucky. Adventurers descend regularly into the depths. A few have even returned, telling stories of mushrooms that think, mushrooms that plot, mushrooms that speak without words, that devour. I dig it. It is very focused, and we'll see very soon. We're going to look at the classes and the factions right after. Very focused on Penumbra City once you actually get into the classes, the factions, everything else. It is, at least so far, a game that is going to be focused on the stories that are told within Penumbra City itself. But this world that surrounds it, I dig it. I wonder if there are more games, or if there will be more games set in this World of Harrow. I'm curious about some of the other God Kings and whatnot. Yes, some of them might be villains, but a lot of the character classes also fuck with the fungus. We fucks with the fungi in this game. So we'll get to that. Yeah, and then now we go into the, I'm just going to go ahead. This is, again, these two, and I'm not going to read the entire book, but I think the introduction is worth reading through together. If I was doing this in a tabletop, I might, at the very least, ask my players to read this so they have an idea of the setting, and if they don't read it, then I will do the voices at them and read it for them. Orc-Wa Origins Inbound. This is actually a World of Warhammer 2K, 40K game. This is where orcs begin. Penumbra City, the silverhead, the local coin, became so inflated that most people abandon currency entirely and make do with mutual aid, where who someone knows and what they think of them matters. Later on, we meet one of the factions over here, the centrist factions, the Lords of the New Order. And their specific thing is that they want, it's an association of business leaders who want nothing more than to get the population of the city back to using money. So that's the thing. Inflation has gone to the point in this city, in this setting, that money is basically useless. It's easier to just owe people favors and do mutual aid. And the merchants hate that. The capitalist forces hate that, because if money becomes worthless, then how are they supposed to translate that into power? That's something that some real-world countries are kind of dealing with right now. As the beasts of Hern, so I'm assuming those are those vivisected half-human soldiers from the kingdom of Hern, who I assume is one of the other god kings. Yeah, fuck the dog kings. As both trade and local food production falter, the people of Penumbra City have learned to count on themselves and each other, and various gangs and factions have formed loose coalitions to meet their needs. The revolutionists seek to see Ath dethroned. The Bulwark is countering them, hoping to bring back the glory of Ath and restore the city and the country by returning law to the city, but also by keeping all labor focused on maintaining the machinery of war. So I'm curious, maybe we'll see in the history who the Reagan, I think Ath is the Reagan of Penumbra City. Meanwhile, a third coalition, who call themselves the Reasonable, just want everyone to calm down, or don't want to make enemies with either side so that they do okay no matter who wins. I think we all know people like that as well. Penumbra City is a tabletop role-playing game set in the World of Harrow. Players are presumed to be roughly aligned with the revolutionists, and most, but not all, playable classes come from the ranks of the revolutionary factions. Each player has a class. Each class is an associated faction. Each faction is part of a larger coalition. During the course of the game, players can find themselves building reputation with different coalitions, and factions can change loyalty between the various coalitions as players build favor with opposed factions. So when we get to the character sheets, we'll see that you start with some default faction points. I have not very far in this book, but it looks like your popularity or your connection to the various factions is going to play a fairly important part in the gameplay of this. So I'm real curious how that's going to go as well. See if the book actually provides good systems for that, or if it's meant to just be kind of walked over. Not 100% sure. So having reputation is helpful so long as it's properly supported, otherwise it can become clunky. Some games handle it well, like Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark, I think, handles it very well. Let's go over to the overview of the classes, because I know this is what a lot of people are really more interested in. They'll want to know about the system, and we'll get to it very shortly. It doesn't look terribly complicated, although I haven't touched combat yet. Combat is usually when things start getting a little bit more complicated. Some with David Dice luck, it's not just roll high or low, it's just roll poorly. True that. Although there is something, I noticed something interesting in the system. We'll get to it shortly. No matter whether you roll high or low, the system has something to tell you. Let's go to the overview of the classes. I'm eager to dive into each one, but first let's go overview of classes. So Penumbra City is a class-based game. Players pick from a pool of classes that determine their abilities, starting equipment, and starting reputation. Each class is tied to a faction. Not every faction currently has a playable class, which will make more sense once we look at the factions shortly. But the first class is the Clackers. They're building a decentralized difference engine in the sewers of the city, and if you don't like it, too bad, because they're also the best bomb makers around. Doesn't do well to interfere with their plans. So I like it. Mad Hacker, Mad Bomber, combine them together. What do you get? You get the Clackers. The Corsorian Knights never get angry. They never get tired. And they also, somehow, never seem to die. The Corsorian Knights belong to an ancient order of anarchist knights who each devise their own tenets and who fight in a calm trance. So there's a couple of classes. The Fungalians are also kind of berserkers. Corsorian Knights are less berserkers and more trance. They go into a battle trance, which is very cool. Dog Girl. Motorcycle riding, house squatting, live fast, die fast mechanic who sings in tongues and knows that one day their bike is going to explode underneath them. If you're the kind of player who likes vehicle and mounted combat, there's two for those. The Dog Girls and the Gas Lampers are also technically vehicle. They have a horse. Dog Girls are the punk motorcycle riders. They also know about everybody in town. We'll get to them shortly. I like the Dog Girls. Drive fast, take chances, the character. Exactly. Precisely, my friend. Ex-Marines. When you leave the Elite Steam Corps, you're supposed to turn in your bolt thrower and your coal-fired exoskeleton. But the ex-Marine must have forgotten. These are the Glitter Boys of this game. That is a reference that me and 3 other people who played Rifts might get. So if you don't get that reference, apologies. Rifts, Palladium Rifts, by the way, is the game If you do know about rifts, my apologies there as well. The ex-Marines are kind of the glitter boys of this. Their main thing and their powers go around their power armor. Then there's the Fungalians, which were the ones that first drew my attention to this game. A street poet who deals fungus, both legal and illegal, whose drugs can bolster her comrades and can send her into a battle frenzy. So again, we've got a little bit of the whole barbarian go into a battle frenzy. Having seen this class a little bit further in the book, I know that they are also more like barbarian. They have some social things they do. The effects that they can do with their drugs, with their mushroom tinctures and whatnot are pretty interesting. So there's barbarian druidish, maybe, kind of. I'm trying to reframe a couple of these in the vernacular of the genre. A little bit of alchemist barbarian on that side, exactly, Strogobus. The Gaslampers, the elite of the upper middle class, belong to a secret society that meets in graveyards, rides black horses, fights with crossbow and sword cane, and recently turned their attention to the overthrow of the God King. So these guys, the Lordlings, are interesting. For these are, for the players that want to play some kind of noble character or some kind of more elite character, rather than almost all of the other ones are just kind of like the dregs of society, ex-Marines, punks, drug dealers, etc., etc. So if you want to play something higher class, those are going to be probably your options there. Then we got the Gunslingers, and I don't know enough about them yet. I haven't gotten to really look at this class very closely, or the Outsiders, because the Outsiders are these immigrants that were referred to earlier, a little bit earlier, who live in the graveyard, which is interesting. And I haven't read about that yet, so I'm curious to see where that'll go. The Gunslinger, the Outsiders, are a strange bunch, most of them living in the graveyard. Some of them are gunsmiths without peer who build and modify their own firearms. So I'm curious to see what this class does and see if there's anything like magical or particularly interesting, or are they just simply like that? Their whole thing is just that they use guns. I'm hoping there's interesting stuff here to do with the guns, because I usually really like gun fu, gun kata, and just magic gun powers. The Labor Thugs, so I mentioned this one earlier. The Labor Thugs, if you ask them, Labor Thugs and the Union are the only thing standing between industrial workers and exploitation. Standing between with iron pipes, wrenches, or anything they can get their hands on. One of the things I'm nervous about in this book right now is power imbalance. You've got people like the Fungalians with special fungus powers. You've got these knights that can fight beyond death. You've got people with power armor. You've got these hacker bomb makers. And then you've got dude with an iron pipe. I'm hoping there's more to them, and I suspect it's probably going to be some social bonuses. They're going to be able to call in friends from the Union, stuff like that. I'm curious what they're going to do with this, because that's a problem I've run into in a few other games, where the wizard characters, or the characters that are a little bit more esoteric, have all sorts of options, and then there's the guy with a big stick archetype, and what do? You hit people with the stick. You get more powerful, you hit them harder, or maybe you hit them more often. Hopefully the Labor Thug has more imaginative stuff, and I think they will. Most of these have surprised me with the depth they have. Let's see. Lordlings. It ain't easy being a rich bastard. Well, maybe it is easy. The Lordling is slumming with the revolutionists, and it turns out privilege can still get you embarrassingly far in this world. The Lordling has all the right gear, can get out of jail with a favor from their father, and can take on the traits of another class. Lordling, at first glance, feels a little OP, doesn't it? You've got a lot of money, you have favors you can call on, and apparently you can take on the traits of other classes. Then again, it may be accurate. Money does get you far. So I'm curious to see how they do this balance, right? If at least story-wise, just make them interesting to play rather than straight up game balance. It's more about like, what makes this interesting? Why would it be at least as interesting to play a Labor Thug as it would to play a Lordling? That's kind of my thought and worry there. Let me catch up on chat real quick. Physical characters are inherently limited to possibility, where magic is throw stuff on the wall and see what kicks. Exactly, right? Like, there's only so many ways you can hit a dude with a stick and make it memorable versus magic, right? It does whatever it wants to do. Lordling feels a little busted off the rip, though I feel like they should get penalties when dealing with Cedar. Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping there will either be benefits or penalties for dealing with some of the Undercity people who can see that you're not one of them. Possibly something along the lines of In addition to having bonuses dealing with the nobility, you can get out of jail with a favors and responsibilities. That's where the lordling would be interesting as a challenge for the GM, for the storyteller, that you rein them in by basically tying them down with favors and responsibilities. Otherwise, they're going to lose those benefits. We'll see once we get there. But I think that's hopefully what they're going to do, because as you said, it does feel a little bit right off the bat. And let's go with the Occultist, which is probably one of my favorites because I always like playing the Wizard. They wear all black. They like bombs. They talk with the dead. They walk the ether. They've got a phantasmal familiar. They read tarot, and they curse anyone who gets in their way. Right, again, or you can have a iron pipe. And look, man, Union... Oh, sorry, did not mean to punch the mic. Sorry for your ears. But look, Union strong always, but Harold. No, like Harold. Okay, Harold. Yeah, actually, that is Harold, isn't it? That is 100% Harold. You're correct. Punch the mic. We're here for it. That is that punk aesthetic you sign up for here, right? Punch the mic. Punch the fight the power. Patchworkers. Here's your healers. Here's the doctors. There's no clerics in this game. Not that kind of game, but you do have a doctor. Patchworker. Everyone is scared of these doctors. They can do wonderful and horrible things with scalpels. They can also slap some fungal paste onto a patch of skin they've cut off a corpse, put that bad boy right onto your wounds, and heal you up. It even works most of the time. I love that. I cannot wait to get to this character class. I love playing healers. In addition to playing wizards, I do like playing healers and support. So I'm curious to see how they handle the patchworker. In any game, I'm also just always curious, like, how I'm going to take a hit. I'm going to get hurt. How bad is that going to fuck me up? For example, right now, we are, those of you who are listening to the Fandom Podcast, we have a Hunter series going on. And my character in that series, Nate Leaf, is very much a non-combatant. He was designed to be, even though it's a game of hunter, and he is a hunter, and he wants to take down the monsters, but he is not a frontline fighter in any way. He is a visionary, so his whole thing is that he researches, he gets these visions, he's able to pinpoint the kind of weakness the monsters has, and then he can give that to the rest of the party so they can deal damage to the monster, take care of it. He tries to stay in the back, tries to not get hurt. Recent game, he got hurt. He got hurt bad. World of Darkness, Mortals. He's alive. Spoilers, he did survive. But rules as written, he's fucked for months at a time. There is some magical healing that can happen, but man, I'd forgotten how much it sucks to be a mortal in these games and get hurt. That sucks to have to play out in character in a game. At least my personal experience, right? Any game where that is very lethal, like one hit can take down half your life or more, and then it's going to take me like months to recover from that one hit. So we'll see how this game handles it. Let's look at the last character sheet. We've been at this for an hour now, and I think we've gone through 3 pages. I like my chances here. Let's see. I haven't even gotten to the part of the book that I bookmarked yet. We're going to have to fly through some of this later. I am going to go through a lot of details, though, because I'm enjoying this. To the makers of Penumbra City, so far I'm liking the themes of the game. I'm enjoying this. I want to get to the rest of it. The last character class. Let's go. Let's see. The Orphans, Rat Kings. The orphans who live in the shadow of the silver are damn strange. The Rat Kings are the damn strangest of them. They eat mushrooms that let them commune with rats, who swarm over them like living armor and attack their enemies. Okay, that's cool. I do love me a good swarm-type character. A lot of my favorite games, like I think Heart has the ones that are, you're basically a living hive of bees, stuff like that. So I do like swarm characters. We'll see how that's approached. All right, so let's talk about the factions. So the Revolutionists, there's 3 factions, right? They did mention this. The Revolutionists, the Bulwark, and the Reasonable. The Revolutionists are mostly what you're going to be playing as. I think there are some that fall under the Reasonable. The Revolutionists don't agree on a lot of things, but they agree on one big important thing. Having a God King who rules everyone is a bad idea. The coalition arose after years of work by the Ireni Federation and others to build bridges between anarchists, Republicans, secret societies, labor unions, and others. So the Ireni Foundation, the people, and the various groups of revolutionists are that left-wing bloc, that organization of people who not necessarily agree on the details of what they're trying to do, but they at least all agree the system needs to change. And that's what you as a player are mostly going to be doing. Methinks they're reasonable will not live up to their namesake. I believe you're right, Struggle Buzz. They are the centrists. Revolutionists. So we've got a few. We've got the children, who probably are basically, if you're a Rat King, you're probably associated with the children. The Corsori, those are the knights, generation back, anarchist refugees from the country Sor, poured into the South Docks, bringing centuries of tradition and culture as well as a penchant for smuggling and revolution. That's one thing that you don't really get from the initial description of the Corsorian knights, where they just mention that they're very stoic. They're also big on smuggling, weirdly enough. They're like paladins. They're like smuggler paladins. We'll get to that very soon. The Dog Girls are the Dog Girls. They fix and ride bikes, they sing opera, they've got one life to live, and it probably wasn't going to be very long anyway. The Areni Federation, this is just the general group. The Fraternal Order of the Gaslampers. So the Gaslampers are, of course, the middle-class cosplayers who are actually a little bit more than just cosplayers, right? They're actually getting some shit done. So good on them. I thought at first that the Gaslampers were going to fall under the reasonable, but no, they're more revolutionists, so I dig them. But props to the Gaslampers. The Hermetic Order of Nothing. These are great. I love these guys. These are the ex-Marines that fall under that. No, wait. The Hermetic Order of Nothing, those are going to be the occultists. Yeah, they were secrets. These days, there isn't a party worth going to without a seance run by someone who can walk the astral plane and speak with the dead, so the Order finds itself with more and more influence and allies. So, okay, those are the wizards. Industrial Workers of Harrow, so that's the Union, and of course the Labor Thugs. The Outsiders, those are going to be your gunslingers. And the Royal Veterans Against Everything. Those are the power armor folks. No one hates the war more than those who fought in it. The Royal Veterans Against Everything are nihilist saboteurs, dead set on destroying the war machine and not too concerned with who will get hurt in the process. Yeah, these are the ones that say, like, yeah, they're gonna get shit done. They don't care if they blow up half the city to do it, which not the best approach in real life, but probably a lot of fun to play. Then we got the various factions of the Bulwark. If you ask them, they're the only thing standing between the people of Penumbra City and chaos, anarchy, and death. The Bulwark includes the church, the military, the elite, and a few gangs who support them in their mission of maintaining the status quo and winning the war. So these are the conservatives. You got the Royal Army, you've got the Church of Ath, you've got the Silver, so these are basically like the high society living up in the city, and the Gloaming, who are down in the city with you. The Shadow is what they call the part of Penumbra City that is literally under the shadow of the Silver. The Shadow is ruled by the king beneath the king and a small private army that guards the city from the horrors of the undercity below. These are interesting because they're kind of local cops, but also a private army, not necessarily owned by the government. They're a private army dedicated to fighting the undercity below, but I'm curious to see if we get to find out more about these guys as we go. And then the Lampreymen. The Rothian immigrants maintain loyalty to Roth, Ath's closest ally, and run most of the fishing industry in Penumbra City out of the South Docks. So I'm guessing these guys are kind of a foil to the Smuggler Knights. We'll see how that goes. And then there's the Reasonable. Traditional power players in society. The Reasonable present themselves as neutral, but most are actually on their own side, the side of capital and private property. No matter what happens in the current struggle, they hope to come out ahead. Other factions, though, just wish all the fighting would stop. So you got the Devils. The Devils are your basic SocDems. These are your socialist Democrats. These are a fraternal lodge in the South Docks that is far more concerned with charity work, running orphanages, and living middle-class lives than fighting for territory. The Devils drape their reasonably mundane and peaceful existence with a veil of ritual and secrecy. There's the Esteemed, a loose federation of smugglers in the North Docks. These are basically art and drug smugglers who have just enough power to be a faction up in the North Docks. The Goetic Lodge, the single most feared, these are the edgelords. These are demon summoners, or people who want to be demon summoners and like the cachet that comes with that. Lords of the New Order, this is your local business group, an association of business leaders who are also organized crime in everything but name. They want to bring people to spend money again. They're capitalists, just pure capitalists. And then the Skips, who it's weird that they're in the Reasonable, but I guess they're just trying to survive. a youth gang that trades in information and offers guide services throughout the city. I think these fall into the reasonable just because they're not in the fight. They're just trying to survive and wish they didn't have to deal with it. So that's what I'm guessing with the skips is going to happen. But those are the three factions, and you as player characters are mostly going to be revolutionists. There's the districts of the city. So after all that setting about the war, then we're focusing on the districts of Penumbra City itself. The city is roughly divided into various districts, some of which are dominated by a single faction, some of which are heavily contested. I'm not going to read all of these out. Basically, the graveyard, half forest, half graveyard, is where the outsiders live, and also where the best parties and shows happen. There's the Iron Quarter, the industrial area of the city, the North Docks, working class area, sailors, merchants, and of course, esteemed smuggling up top. We've got the South Docks, maintained by the Lampreymen. We've got the Shadow, the area beneath the Silver, technically off limits, but that doesn't stop anybody. Forever Dark, trash heap for the rich. Fungus grows everywhere. Adventure! We've got Penumbra North, north of Shadow. Pious and Loyal make their homes. This is the middle class area. This is probably where most of the reasonable live. Penumbra South. Abandoned mansions and row homes. This is the most hotly contested area of the city. This is where you go to fight. Scavengers raid the wall of trash that surrounds the Shadow and fight over territory. The Plaza, that's the neutral zone. Want to be probably where your home base is. This is ruled by the Areni Foundation. And also it's got theaters, rooftop gardens, and the sewers beneath it hold the Clacker Network, a decentralized difference engine. Old Town, so this Old Town is the underworld. This is the first part before the Undercity. So if you want to do some dungeon delving, good old classic dungeon delving in this game, don't worry, we got you covered. The Outs, middle class suburb full of parks and row homes and secret societies. That's probably where the gas lampers are. And then the Silver, the floating, thousands of feet above the city. Silver is full of the rich and powerful merchant lords and priests. Not a lot of adventure is going to take place up there, but it would be interesting to explore. And I wonder if the book will give us, I mean, we see angels and stuff. I'm assuming at some point you can assault Silver and try and take down the God King. I'm curious to see if we get there. It's fine if there isn't one, just one of those makes sense to put next to the description. Yes, it would. I fully agree. Look at this. This would have been perfect for a map, I think. Kind of a shame that it's not there. Good point. Then again, Theater of the Mind, so much, but I would have liked a map. All right, how to play. All this stuff is just like what is tabletop, what the players and game masters do. We skip a lot of this, and let's go straight to game mechanics. So create a character, you pick a class, you figure out what the character is and the factions. You get your ability scores, which we'll talk about in a second. Roll your hit points, name your character, get your equipment, pick an extra language, and then, yeah, think about who they are and discuss how they know the other characters in the party. That's basically just background stuff. It's pretty straightforward. The characters have a lot of things they can do, but there's not a lot of stuff to pick through at first. We'll get to that shortly. Ability scores. This game only has 4 of them. Strength, speed, will, and knowledge. And they go from 1 to 18. You'll be rolling 3d6s. We'll get to those shortly. Strength, just physical might, fighting with certain weapons, defending against certain attacks, performing athletic acts, resisting. So basically strength and constitution kind of rolled up into one as strength. Speed is your dexterity and movement, but also kind of your wits. Character's quick thinking and action. Use a determined battle order, fight with certain weapons, defend against certain attacks, operate some devices. Determine how quickly a character moves away from danger. So yeah, so dexterity, movement, and wits kind of all represented under speed. Yeah, it's pretty direct. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty straightforward. Will. So will is kind of your personality / willpower / charisma. So will's characters for personality, willpower, convince, intimidate, defend against compulsion. The last two, will and knowledge, are both kind of like magic stats. Will is sort of like charisma / willpower, while knowledge is more like intelligence. So character's ability to know things, figure things out, solving puzzles, tracking down information or creatures, noticing things that other places are hidden, understanding how to make and fix machines. Knowledge can also be used to hide, and knowledge is used for some hermetic magic or mycomancy. So that's interesting that knowledge is your stealth skill. I'm not sure how I feel about that approach, but there it is. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just getting weird messages. Ignore that. All right, and yeah, so those are your 4 stats. Just 4 stats, not a full 6-stat thing. Still very D&D-like in the range. And I think we're going to skip ahead real quick just to, how do you determine them. So you've got a couple of ways. So you can see what the ability scores are From a 5 is pretty bad to an 18, which is prodigious, an 11 or even a 13 is already considered expert, a 15 is considered world class. You determine your scores either by rolling 3d6, you do that 5 times and drop the lowest. If you don't get any score that is 12 or higher, then you discard the whole thing and re-roll again, roll 5, discard the lowest, and then spread those out. Or you just have a standard array. You just have a 7, a 9, an 11, and a 13, and you assign those out to your 4 stats as it makes sense for your character class. So again, pretty straightforward. The numbers feel low, especially considering how the actual game system goes. We're going to hang out a little bit here because there's a lot to learn. But at the same time, I like that the bulk of the system is here. It's basically this section for ability checks, because ability checks are 99% of what you're going to be doing. And the core mechanic is an ability check rolled with a d20. It's a roll under system, which lower numbers for ability checks are better than high numbers. Anytime a player wants to perform an action with a chance of failure, shooting someone with a gun, jumping from a moving horse, dodging the swing of a sword, and this is a game where the GM very rarely rolls, so you as a player would roll to attack, you would also roll to, as a GM would not roll to attack you, you as a player would roll to dodge. You roll a d20. If the number is equal to or lower than the relevant ability score, the check succeeds. So pretty straightforward. You don't really have skills. You do have proficiencies later on, but there isn't like roll me your hiding skill or your perception skill or your whatever. You roll the appropriate ability that would match the action you're trying to do. By default, you're just rolling your ability, and you want to roll low. So if you have a strength of 13, for example, and you're trying to break down a door, you just want to roll under your strength. So if my strength is 13, I would roll a d20. That was a bad roll. That was an 18. I did not make it. So we got 5. There we go. That was a good roll. So that 5 would get me through. If you roll a 1, that's an excessive success. If you roll a 20, that's the strings attached. We'll get to those again very shortly. The main way to make things easier or harder is advantage and disadvantage dice. You might roll with advantage dice or disadvantage dice due to circumstances. Each advantage dice is an initial d20 the player rolls. The player keeps only the lowest/best result. Disadvantage dice work in the inverse. The player rolls additional dice but keeps only the highest/worst result. That's, again, pretty straightforward. Let's see, that's a choice. There's stealth of movement, which is like planning where you go, but not how you do it. So Dex, agility, coordination is a social stealth, i.e. deception. It is interesting. Hopefully we'll see in the game how that's meant to apply, because so far the only reference to hiding or stealth is in knowledge, which is... So one thing with advantage, and I like this approach here, if you have advantage dice on an attack roll, you have a choice to make. Before you roll that attack, you decide whether you are adding the advantage dice to the attack roll. You have to decide that before you roll. If you add it to your attack roll, then you just roll 2d20 and take the best result. Both of those would have missed. If you're doing damage, then you roll to hit as normal. You attack as normal, and then if you hit, you add those advantage die as extra damage, which is cool. I kind of like that you as a player have that option, because sometimes, especially games like this where you roll attack and damage separately, you might get advantage on a hit and then roll very poorly on damage. And that can still happen here, but if you have advantage, you can maybe make it so that, and you already know you got a good chance to hit, then you can pour that extra effort into damage and make that advantage actually matter to you. So I do dig that. And yeah, proficiency might come into play there, I guess, as well. Good point. I do like that little twist of advantage in combat where you get to choose whether you want to put it to damage or to hit. And then excessive successes. So a natural roll of 1. Here we go. So on a nat 1, player succeeds excessively. In combat, you might do double damage or hit 2 opponents at once or have some other beneficial occurrence at the GM's discretion. For example, they might stab with their spear and skewer their opponent, but also prevent another opponent from swinging their axe. Basically, success plus, you'll get something cool. With certain game effects, excessive success might include specific outcomes that are listed with the effect. So some specific abilities might have something special that happens on a nat 1, but that is your critical hit and critical success, and it seems to apply to basically all rolls. And then there's strings attached. And this one's interesting because it's kind of your crit fail. If you roll a nat 20, that was not a nat 20. There we go. If you were to roll a nat 20 like I just did, you technically succeed. Even though it's sort of the worst roll you could have made, you do succeed in what you were trying, but with strings attached. A player might dodge an attack only to fall down a flight of stairs, or intimidate a bartender into giving up information but anger her friends enough that they wait outside with knives. It is up to the GM to determine the strings attached. With certain devices such as firearms, explosives, or steam-powered vehicles, the strings attached might include catastrophic failure, which is covered under each weapon and vehicle entry. So again, some things might have special catastrophic things, but I like that it's like, okay, cool, nat 20. So you still get what you were going after, but there's gonna be a big consequence. I like that better than just like extra fail. Not only did you fail to do the thing, but also your ass is on fire. It's like, all right, your ass is about to be on fire, but you did grab the jewel of Flarbenar. So I like that approach better, because it moves the story along. I generally just don't like things that are just like straight up pass fail. Like even a failure on a roll should lead to more story. In this system, that's not 100%, because if I just fail a roll, well, then it didn't happen. I prefer systems that have that built in a little bit more. We'll see how that goes. But I do like this version of crit fail, where you still get what you were going after, but in the getting of it, shit goes off the rails. So I do kind of like, yeah, it's a different take on the fail forward mentality, at least for this one specific result. So not too bad. And so here's where Proficiency takes it. So. And it's an interesting approach here as well. It says, characters should be good at the things that they are good at, which 100% agreed. And I like what they do here. If a character is trained in something and they fail an ability check to do that thing, it might just take that character longer to accomplish a task, or perhaps they don't do a great job. A GM could also grant advantage dice to players to perform the tasks in which they are particularly versed. So if you are proficient in something, if you're really good at lockpicking or something, it makes more sense that even if you roll and you fail the roll, that one would have succeeded. That was a 7. Let's see. That's a 3. Now I'm rolling well, right? Jesus. Come on. There we go. 16. Probably a failure. But it's something that I'm proficient in, something that I'm supposed to be good at. Then I do it anyway. Maybe it took me longer. Maybe that should have taken only 1 minute and it took 5. So now we're a little bit more stressed. The guards will show up at any moment. Yeah, but again, you do fail forward. You do move forward. I do like that, because it's really embarrassing when you're like, especially like when you are doing something that your character's supposed to be good at, you fail, and then somebody else in the party who normally sucks, or has the same skill at like a lower level or something, rolls and then they make it. Look, I get it, okay, that can happen in the real world and everything, but it kind of sucks. Kind of sucks as a player. So I like that. That's less of a problem here with this proficiency approach. That said, I don't know how proficiency is handled. This is a thing you get probably like as we progress. Yeah, looks like you can get more proficiencies. Actually, there's an interesting learning process for that. We'll get to that shortly. But that's how proficiency is. So it's a little wibbly wobbly, but I'd have to see in practice how that works. Let's go ahead and see. And then the other two are just some general guidelines. Difficulty within reason just basically means, hey, no matter if you've got a strength of 18 and you roll the nat 1, you're probably not going to be able to like lift a boulder that's bigger than you are. Like certain things are going to be impossible no matter what the dice say. So that's basically the difficulty within reason. Same thing with setting difficulty. So basically, since you can't say since your difficulty for a roll, your target number is always your stat, your ability score. In order to make something easier or harder as the GM, I have to add in advantage or disadvantage dice to a roll to reflect that, which is kind of wild. because even just going to a single disadvantage die already can make things like it's a real big, I feel like, ramp up in difficulty, because because you can add multiple disadvantages, unlike games like D&D and most games that have advantage or disadvantage, where mostly it's just you ever only really have either advantage or disadvantage, and if you have multiple sources of advantage and disadvantage going, they'll just kind of cancel each other out. If there are more advantages and disadvantages, then you have one advantage, or if there are more disadvantages and advantages, then you just have disadvantages. Here you can have multiple advantages, multiple disadvantages, and I think that's, again, I'd have to look at the math, but that seems like a wild difficulty spike. Even just a single disadvantage dice can really change the odds there. So I'm curious. I could probably pull up the browser now and play with that, but I'm not going to. Just let's keep in mind that is how this game handles setting difficulty. Let's see, catching up with chat again. In the scenario, it almost walks the line of, why are you making this person roll? I know it's trying to make competence important, and that's a key feature, but at the same time, you say the thing is done and move on to the next part of the story. Fair, exactly. And I think like I would personally house rule it that if you are like what's it? I think in World of Darkness, I don't know if New World of Darkness or Chronicles or whatever it is now has that, but you can sort of, quote unquote, take a 10, which basically just means like, assume I rolled this default roll, and if that would have been a success, then I do it at a basic level. So I would kind of house rule something like that, where if you're proficient at something, I will let you do this at a very basic level. So going with that lockpick example, I would say, if you want to do this fast, I'm going to need you to roll. If you just want to say that it's done because you are a lockpicker, you are, let's say you're a dog girl and you're good at breaking into locks and breaking into machinery, then if you don't want to roll, no worries, but it's going to take you about 5 minutes. But if you roll, then you can try and do this faster, right? You can try and get it done within a minute, so you can just get in and out quick. If you don't want to roll, it's going to take about 5. If you fail the roll, it's still going to take about 5. And you might roll a critical success, and it's on your, right. At that point, it's your choice. Like, all right, we can wait 5 minutes. Somebody just keep an eye out while I do this, and depending on the adventure, then I'll go, okay, cool, you get it done, or as it's finishing, you start hearing the approach of approach of guards or whatever. Depends on the situation, but I think that's mostly how I would handle it. And it's the player's choice whether A, they want to speed up, and B, whether they want to take the risk of maybe rolling a 20 and getting it done quick, but also the guards found them, or whatever. But I like kind of letting that choice be the players. Some good old 3.5 stuff. Is that really how? It's been so long. It's been so long. But again, I think that's how I would approach that anyway. All right, so then the rest is just like when to roll, just basic tabletop RPG stuff. But I think we get the drill of the basic ability scores and how we do this. NPCs, we know what NPCs are. So time is also interesting because the game basically the game gives you 3 modes, sort of. It goes, gameplay is generally divided into 3 types of time: calm, tension, and combat. Up to the GM to determine what time it is. So if it's calm, that's your basic, like, we're just hanging out, we're in our hangout, we're in our hideout, we're out on the streets, when it's calm and you're just kind of generally role-playing, there's probably not going to be a lot of rolling. Most role-playing happens during calm, in which characters are unhurried. Routine actions don't require an ability check during calm. Character can translate from language they know, perform a ritual they're familiar with, climb over a fence, swim. So basically just your regular everyday navigation through town. You're not being chased, etc., etc. Tension describes moments when things could change quickly, when characters are in a hurry or are doing something high stakes, like trying to intimidate a guard into letting them through a gate, or trying to disarm a bomb. Tension is time when mistakes matter more and when players should be more wary of interactions that can escalate into combat. During tension, many more actions require ability checks. Translating that text or climbing that fence is a lot riskier when you can't take your time. Blah, 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 blah. And then combat. When combat breaks out, gameplay becomes turn-based. Most actions require ability checks. So it's interesting because most games just have either calm and combat. I like that this is more formalized a little, in that in calm it's very much meant to be you're probably not going to roll. It's just pure storytelling because there's no rush, there's less pressure, and then tension is when if you're making rolls, you're making ability rolls, it's probably because there's tension. If there's no tension, then you probably shouldn't be making rolls. You should just be telling the story. I kind of like that approach. Let's see. I would hope you know the basic of tabletop RPGs by now. Well, we've been playing them for decades. Yeah, true. But again, the thing with a lot of games is that you almost have to spend some time explaining again what combat is, what theater of the mind is, what initiative is, and stuff like that, because you always have to sort of assume that the person picking up the book might not know all this stuff. And I've seen some games that go like, hey, here's a URL or something. This is what tabletop RPGs are in general. Come back here when you know the lingo. But by default, you do kind of have to like cover this stuff the first time. Also, and as a player, as a GM, you have to read it because every now and then the game will hide something in its definition of initiative that you're like, well, fuck, that actually changes the way the whole game plays, you know? So yeah, for sure it needs to be there for anyone who hasn't been involved. Exactly. And again, because even if you have been, you do have to check because you never know, like if there was maybe something special. Like for example, it's not a hard and fast rule, but that sort of definition of like when in calm, you probably don't roll, even for things that you might think would require a roll, you probably don't, because there's less of that tension and pressure. I do like that's formalized a little here. Let's see. So combat is primarily theater of the mind. So we're not doing grids and ranges and stuff, which is cool. I mean, we do have ranges: close, nearby, distant, far away. Again, standard sort of theater of the mind stuff. Initiative is made. Every character does a speed check at the start of combat. Those who pass the check go before their opponents for each round of that combat, while those who fail the check go after their opponents. NPCs that are allied with the player characters go at the very end of the round. After player characters have failed their speed checks, characters in each section can decide amongst themselves who goes when. So, yeah, safety features like Session 0, X cards, lines, and veils need to be there. And actually, yeah, I haven't seen any mention of safety. Let me see. Maybe in the how to play. Let me see. Do players might choose to take on responsibilities? James writing. Okay, so no, this is modules, planning sessions. So they do give some basic advice on like, yeah, GM is not trying to win against the players. Yeah, some general advice. Starting a new campaign, okay, maybe. Dude, I'm curious about, yeah, so they do kind of say, yeah, okay, so there's a mention of a quote-unquote Session 0 game session that is just planning, talk the whole thing over. Good time for players to come up with ideas. Interesting. Yeah, so they do mention kind of a Session 0, and they do some lip service, but yeah, there isn't a lot of a specific mention of safety tools. This game is fairly recent, right? This was done in... let's see, copyright. When is this license? 2024, yeah. So kind of surprising that there's little to no mention of safety tools at first glance. Interesting. It is, by the way, this game is ORC licensed, Open Gaming ORC license. So that's cool. That's why I'm not too worried about kind of showing it as we go. Even though, again, this is all very much covered by fair use right now, as we're just examining. But also, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's a balance of some old school and some more modern stuff. But I am a little surprised, mildly disappointed that there's not that much reference, especially considering that this game does deal with some rough topics, and they do make a point earlier of like sort of stating. Basically stating that, hey, you need to come in here with the kind of mindset, this kind of revolutionary mindset into this game, and this mutual aid and stuff. So yeah, a little bit of a stumble there, I think, not having more. Although again, maybe later in the book, but usually that stuff is covered Usually that stuff is covered earlier, like as you're during the initial game setup, rather than leaving it for later for a DM section or anything like that. Which I don't. A lot more information on the various factions back there. Who is who? Yeah, a lot of this. So it looks like later on. Okay, actually no. I'm gonna have to go through because there's like bestiary, there's weapons, but then there's setting. So the organization on this is a little weird. Again, we'll get diversity. Anyway, we'll get to it as we go. But yeah, weird on the lack of. And yes, good avoiding any Wizards BS. Yeah, no, this is completely. They're not even using the OGL. They're using the Orc license, which is good. Generally considered to be good. All right, let's see. So combat again, it's a theater of the mind kind of vibe. Initiative is a little wibbly, which I like, honestly, better than certain. Sometimes I like a flexible initiative and a fairly simple. So you make a speed check. If you pass a check, you go before the bad guys. If you fail the check, you go after the bad guys. NPCs that are on your side always go last after everything else, after players have failed their speed checks. If you are going before the bad guys, then the players decide amongst themselves who it makes more sense should go first, which I love, because one of my annoyances with some more strict initiative things is when, like, I'm playing, a character that their actions are best taken after later in the round, and you make the mistake of rolling well, and now you have to declare. And then there's the other systems, like, okay, sidebar. Hey, hi, I do that. I go on tangents, but like World of Darkness, I like the idea behind, like, everybody rolls initiative, and it is like per result you determines the order you will act, but also the further you're supposed to describe your actions and then resolve in reverse. Like the person who technically goes last in the round is supposed to say, okay, I want to do X. And then the person who goes next after that goes, okay, based on that, I want to do Y. And then the person who goes after, who goes before them goes, well, based on that and that, I want to do W. And so forth and so on, all the way back, so that the first person to act was the last person to see what everybody else was going to do and makes their decision based on that, therefore potentially ruining the round for everyone else coming after them. There's a reason I think like most games of World of Darkness that I've played, and to be fair, big fan of Fandible.com, one of the oldest running tabletop RPG podcasts on the internets. We kind of just do what we want with the rules for most games. We're not great. We're not the podcast you listen to if you're trying to stay true to the rules. And I think in every World of Darkness game we've done, we just take our turns, and whoever's supposed to go first goes first, and then their actions are now canon. But technically that's how you're supposed to resolve it, which I appreciate the concept, but in practice slows down what's already very slow combat in World of Darkness, right? All right, so initiative, cool. I like it. Overall, it's got, to me, the right kind of wibbly wobbly where there is still like a random element to it where you roll to see if you go before or after the enemies, which is really the thing that matters most. Do you get to act before or after the people that are trying to punch you in the face? I like this. You use the dice to determine whether you get punched or punched first, but then within the punchies, you are still working within your group. So, the person who needs to do their thing after your thing can just tell you that, and that's fine. It's not some weird, like, oh, can I hold my action kind of thing. Cool. I like it. Let's see here. round. So combat is divided into rounds in which every participant has a chance to act in turn. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So they define a round as about 10 seconds, although again, this is an abstraction. Good. Always remember that it is an abstraction. It takes as long as it takes. Let's see, surprise. So during calm or tension, character who initiates combat may make a speed check. Also, there's an actual mechanic to try and surprise. Interesting, I like that. So during calm or tension, the character who initiates combat may make a speed check to see if they are able to attack unexpectedly. This check is not from the character's roll to attack, but a roll to see if they can... So you can roll to surprise. So it's less about... Okay, I kind of dig that. Roll to surprise. Let's see. Only one character can do this, and doing so will generally escalate calm or tension into combat. Yep, fair enough. If the check fails, no action is taken before initiative is rolled per usual. If the check succeeds, the player successfully surprises the opponent and can make an attack before initiative is rolled. They receive an advantage die on the attack. So if you're going to attack anyway, right? It sounds like, based on this mechanic, that if you're going to do an attack, there is no downside. If the check fails, no action is taken before initiative is rolled as per usual. So there really is no downside. If you just are going to go ahead and say, I want to stab this dude in the face, you should always, try and make it a surprise. Try and make it a surprise attack. There's literally, I guess the risk is that if you're rolling a speed check, like that would have been an excellent, like that would have been a 2, so that probably would have succeeded, and a 1 would have been amazing. But if you had rolled, there's the chance that you roll a 20, and if you roll a 20, then you still get to go first, but something horrible happens. So I guess there is I guess you gotta weigh the probably over 50% chance of getting in a free hit with the 5% chance that you'll still get in a free hit, but it's gonna make something else suck. So while there is a slight downside, a very low downside, a 5% downside, like it feels like it's even then you still get that free hit. Like you should always just roll for surprise. Again, based on what I'm seeing here. Tell me if I'm wrong. If the GM is attempting to surprise the PCs, then the GM must pick a single character to target and will ask them to roll a speed check. On a failure, the PC is surprised. If the GM is using an attack that affects more than one character, then all affected characters make speed checks and those who fail are surprised. If the PC is surprised, the affected players roll to defend with a disadvantage die. For example, okay, so basically that's a surprise attack from the GM side. Interesting. Okay. And that works because, again, in this system, the GM almost never rolls. So if I want to do a surprise, I ask you, who I'm attacking, to make a speed check to not be surprised. Cool. All right. Yeah, straightforward enough, I guess. Let's see. Ranges. Okay, so these are just, general, close, nearby, distant, far away. That's pretty common and straightforward for a theater of the mind combat. Nothing weird there. Yeah, exactly. And so the ability, vehicle, and weapon descriptions will reference these sort of general ranges. Okay, and then turns. So, okay, what do you get to do in a turn? You get one main action, one move action, and any number of free actions. Cool. So main action is going to be stuff like attacking, the main thing that you do on your turn. So attacking, reloading, most class abilities, includes making one attack or using one ability. Doing complex tasks would also use up a main action. So yeah, best judgment, but it's your main thing that you do, including your attack. You have a separate move action. And let's see, can you do, if your character, it would take character 2 move action. Okay, so you take a move action to change between ranges, which is cool. That's fine. That's pretty normal. 4 actions to far away from their started, right? A move action cannot generally be broken up. Character cannot move a little, perform a main action, then move again. However, a character may use free actions as part of their move action. For instance, a character could, as part of their move action, run towards a building, open the door, continue moving through the building, and then attack someone. Okay, so that's, again, fairly straightforward. Free actions All right, that's GM's discretion. Can include things like drawing or storing a weapon, picking up an object. So my only complaint, and it's not really a complaint, it's just because this is kind of universal in most RPGs, is that this is very... It's a hard thing to ask for more definition here, because these are still fairly wordy definitions while still leaving a lot up in the air, and that's just kind of the nature of it. Unless you already have a very tactical approach or a more D&D like 5e approach, and even there's always like, is this a free action? Is this a bonus action? Is this a main action? So it's a complicated thing no matter what. But this almost feels a little bit... I don't know. I guess in practice it probably doesn't matter that much, right? It's a lot of this stuff is instinctive, and with a good play group and a GM that knows what they're doing, most likely not going to be a problem to determine, the difference between a free action and a main action. But for example, in the very example of the given move actions, I can see GMs ruling it differently. Like a character could, as part of their move action, run towards a building, open the door, and then continue moving through the building and then attack someone. So it's saying the attack is your main action, open the door as a free action. And so you did the free action as part of your move action, which is cool. That's how I would rule it. This is my approach. But I can see GMs saying, even if the door isn't locked, saying that having to stop and open it, that's your action. And in fact, it's probably best that they use that example to make it clear that something like a basic opening a door is considered a free action, not a main action. But I can see that becoming a sticking point. I can see some GMs deciding, ruling that differently. So I'd be curious to see how that works out. I guess hopefully during playtesting, didn't turn out to be as much of an issue as I'm making it here, and it probably isn't that much of an issue. I'm being nitpicky here about how much it feels like it's being left up to use common sense, even though I myself am a big proponent of, hey, use some goddamn common sense when it comes to a lot of tabletop RPG rules. Reactions. Every class has some kind of reaction ability that can be used once a round, but not on a character's turn, in response to some kind of triggering stimulus that is noted in the specific ability. For instance, a character's reaction ability might be triggered by being attacked, but not necessarily by being hit by an attack. Therefore, the player may assert that they are using their reaction when it has been declared that they are being attacked. Some equipment has features that can be used as reactions. The character can only make one reaction per round. For example, polearms have the reach feature, which allows the character as a reaction to make an attack. Interesting. So each character has a unique reaction ability that's theirs only. So it's not like there are basic reactions for everything, and they're different from free actions. But then some items or other abilities might also, but there'll be specific reactions based on the item or ability. Interesting. Okay. We'll see how that goes once we actually look at some items and abilities, right? Let's see. It feels like a 5e comparison at first glance, but there's rules lawyer territory. Exactly. That's the thing. newer groups with that can get a little bit weird. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's probably not a problem, but coming from a point of view of like, maybe you've got some 5e players, like looking at they're playing something different for the first time. I could see this tripping up some groups used to more definition, but that's probably going to be, again, a bit of a universal ding against most or a lot of theater of the mind kind of approaches versus that D&D more grid-based approach. All right, let's see. Attacking. So attacks are made with weapons or unarmed strikes. To make an attack, character makes an ability check as determined by the weapon. Cool. Ability check is called an attack roll. In success, they hit their target and make a damage roll as determined by the weapon. Unarmed strikes attack with strength and do 1 damage. Okay. Players are encouraged to describe their actions. Basic. When attacking with advantage dice, a character can, before rolling, assign this advantage dice right to attack or damage. We already saw that. Very cool. But otherwise, attacking is pretty straightforward. Weapon, the dice you use is determined by the weapon on both the to hit and the damage. Easy enough. Using class abilities. An ability differentiated from an ability score. I feel like maybe you should have renamed. Again, you know what? This is again being nitpicky. Whatever. I'm going to take the name. The personal nitpick. I would have tried to use a different, like class powers or class talents or something like that. So when I go like, all right, make an ability check or make an ability roll, it doesn't present that confusion, especially to new players. Then they're looking at their abilities, their class abilities, instead of their ability scores. So yeah, that I would have definitely chosen a different name there. But hey, good. We'll keep that in mind, that we have ability scores and then abilities, which are the actual class abilities. So ability scores and class abilities. We use the two words each time so that we don't get confused. The abilities are usually determined by the characters or classes NPCs. Stab block. Abilities can cause damage, prevent damage, cause a status to be applied to a character, or any number of other game effects, right? Well, but they can be used as main actions, free actions, reactions, or when a character is out of action. I know OOA means out of action. Did we? I don't think we've defined OOA before. Why am I being so nitpicky? I actually like this game, but I'm being weirdly nitpicky. I guess because I'm pouring through it now. But I know this is out of action. But this is, I think, the first time it's been mentioned in the book. And I don't think it's been properly defined. Just a quick, like, parentheses, out of action. Or, see page whatever where you actually define out of action, which is here. So it's one page later, but again, the first reference to something being just its initials before the something is actually defined, without a link to where the something is defined. Why? I hate that I'm being nitpicky. I hate that I'm being so nitpicky. Again, look, the people who wrote this book, what was his name? I'm gonna butcher it again. No, I don't. Here we go. Inaman Neruin. No problem. I have no quarrel with you, Inman. But Cassandra, I do have. I'm sorry. I do have a quarrel with you. They're minor. They're minor quibbles. This is not ruining the game for me. I'm just being nitpicky for no good reason. Please ignore these criticisms, but also please note them down for the reprint or second edition of this game, should it ever come. Anyway, every ability is a little different, and we'll list. Okay, so point is, abilities are wild cards. Class abilities do what they do, and we'll find out what they do when we look at the class abilities. Pretty much straightforward. Okay, defending. Let's see. When a character is attacked. When a character is attacked, they can attempt to defend themselves by making an ability check called a defense roll. A player can make any number of defense rolls. Defending does not use a player's reaction. The ability score rolled for each defense roll is dictated by the type of attack. Most weapons are defended against with either speed or strength. Essentially, speed is used to dodge the attack, while strength is used to block it, or in the case of blowguns and vapors, resist its effect. Regardless of the outcome, a player is encouraged to describe their actions when they succeed or fail. Yes. So basically, yeah, cool. Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, so you take a swing at the hideous monster. 5, that's a hit. Cool. And this is my super sword, which does, because I'm not going to look for other dice, a d20's worth of damage against this kind of monster. Cool. Holy shit! Why don't I get these when I'm playing? 20 points of damage! The thing is on fire because my sword sets it on fire. I am not doing a good job of selling my professional GM services and not living up to my reviews, am I? Anyway, it's on fire, but as it falls back, it is not dead, and it lashes out at you with its fiery swords. Roll me speed or roll me to dodge. Or roll me to block strength, and you roll, and hey, that's a good roll. You did dodge. Anyway, my big monster is getting totally fucked in this example. To be fair, you don't have players to bounce energy off of. True. Also, I'm making shit up as I go along. But this is pretty straightforward. This is Numenera. This is, to me, games where the GM rolls are sort of the default games where the GM doesn't roll they're all Numenera to me. So this is now Numenera. This is Cypher System. That's how I'm choosing. This is how I'm choosing to perceive it. Once I'm in that mindset, okay, cool, I get it. The GM doesn't roll. When the monster attacks you, you roll to defend against it, which is interesting. And then I guess we'll see once we get to the bestiary. But I'm guessing particularly brutal monsters will, or particularly well-armored monsters, might inflict disadvantage dice on rolls against them. Rolls to defend against them, rather. I'm guessing, right? Is that? Let's take a quick look at a monster, any monster. Seraphic Servant, Perfect Body. Opponent must make. No, that's a different thing. This is a different other thing. Let's see, no, these are like people. Do we have like a monster? Attacks. 1d6. Anyone who takes damage must roll 1d10. Blah blah blah. I don't know. Well, close target, defense with speed. Okay, so their attacks define what you defend against them with, which is cool. But other than that, let me see. I don't see any examples of defense with speed. Yeah, I don't see anything that says like, oh, I mean, I guess we'll look at these a little bit closer when we get them. But I'm wondering if there are any enemies that are, let's see, officers of Hearn look like human. Do they have anybody that has any kind of armor? Aha, here we go. Oh, bull. Oh, this is just a straight up strength check now. Or rather, something that, no, I don't see anything. One nearby target or two close targets, interesting. Will check, strength, close target defense with strength. Yeah, so I think it's just like, yeah, they can still have some interesting stuff, like damage will bypass stuff. But yeah, so that's see, what I'm thinking is as you get more powerful, or rather as you fight more powerful enemies, but you're still rolling the same thing to defend. I guess because the attacks from the more powerful enemies have side effects or have additional effects. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going off on a tangent here on how that would affect higher level play. That said, this game actually we haven't seen it yet, but this game caps out at level 5. Like, this is not a high level campaign kind of thing. Your characters actually start out very capable to start with, even at level 1, and you can get substantially more by every level, but it really does cap out at level 5. So it's also not like, I don't know, I guess once we get to the monsters, we'll take a closer look. What I specifically want to do is look at a low-level monster, like look at your giant rat, your basic giant rat or whatever, and then look at one of the higher-level monsters, like I guess those angels that we kind of glimpsed, stuff like that, and compare what about these monsters makes them more or less dangerous to a group that is, like a level 1 group versus a level 5 group, right? And finally, let's see, escape in combat. We're going to go so much faster than the rest of this book. Escape. If players wish to retreat from combat before their opponents are defeated... Sorry, take some water here. The players may initiate an escape. An escape can include trying to outpace their opponents in a chase or finding places to hide. During an escape, players are still in combat, and initiative order remains the same. Players can use their main actions to make speed checks to run or knowledge checks to hide from their opponents. Once again, knowledge is your stealth, is your hiding skill. Interesting. Escaping requires 2 success. So there's a specific system for it. I like that. Escaping requires 2 successful checks on different turns. So it can keep going, but you need to make 2 successive turns. So you can, if you fail one, it's not immediately over. I guess you can keep going after making successful player rolls further escape checks. Okay, and once you made your first one, the second one is rolled with advantage. Good, I like that. There's a reward for success. Players successfully escape. They cease to be targeted by opponents, will remain in combat and act in initiative order until all players have escaped. Okay, so escape is individual per player. Fair enough. Player automatically escapes if they move far away from their opponents or someone that can't be followed. Escape players that attack opponents reveal themselves and must make their escape checks all over again. Okay, character is hiding, the cover is destroyed, antagonist otherwise reveals the hiding place. Character must start escaping again. Fair. Combat is over. Okay, cool. So basically it turns the set of escape rolls into basically a chase scene. Cool. I wonder how often this would be seen, because in my experience, most players are allergic to running from combat. So we'd have to see like how you encourage them. And I think having there be a system, I actually like this, because I think having there be an escape system, making sort of this roll off and sort of hide and seek chase scene. If you're at all a capable GM, you're going to turn this into a scene. You're going to do a lot of descriptions here, and this, like a good chase scene, is a hell of a lot of fun. If you're not taking the opportunity to turn this into a chase scene, what are you even doing? But yeah, but I think that the fact that there is a scene with this might make it happen more often. Right? Because there is a specific system. It's like, you know what, this is not going well. We're about to learn about hit points and how you recover, so we'll see this in a moment. It's under my hand. But like, hey, we're getting our asses kicked, or we can't take this risk, or it's taking too long, or as a GM, you're like, you have to get out of the wherever it is that you invaded. You don't have time for a long, protracted fight. Let's do an escape. So there's a system for it. I dig that, and I think it would open the possibility more to players occasionally just running from combat, or trying to evade it and run from it and escape from it when it's not strictly necessary, because there's a system to handle that. So that approach. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk hit points and armor points. So characters track their hit points and armor points, HP and AP. HP is an abstraction of the physical health of the character. Okay, pretty straightforward. Character successfully attacked, they might lose HP. Damage is absorbed first by the character's armor, if any, which is abstracted as AP. Okay, so your armor is a rating that wears down with use. Once the character's AP is reduced to 0, all additional damage directly affects the character's HP, including any remaining damage from the attack that reduce the damaged character's AP to 0. Okay, so roll over attack. Roll over damage between one or the other. Straightforward. There's some attacks that bypass armor and damage HP directly. Cool. Makes sense. Character starts with a number of HP determined by the character class. Okay, so rest and recovering hit points and armor points. Okay, recovering AP. I want to read about that in a second. HP is recovered naturally when a character rests at a rate of 1 to 3 hit points. Based on their class, characters can recover HP from resting once per 24-hour period. Rest requires character to have a period of at least 6 hours of sleep, yada, yada, yada. If you don't get that, you don't get HP. Okay, so pretty straightforward healing. Recovering HP through magic. Okay, so fungal magic or patchworking. Blah, blah, blah. The works of Hands of God, who's a character with the life force of dead angels through a process known as seraphic healing. So point is, there is magical healing as well. That was covered by its own rules. Recovering AP. This is important, because these are items, they cost money. AP is recovered completely after each combat. This mechanic has no real-world justification. It is a way of abstracting the role. Okay, I already love it. Already love it. It is a way of abstracting the role of armor into gameplay. Armor only provides so much protection per combat. When a character's AP is depleted, their armor is not destroyed or broken. It has just provided as much protection as it could. Once combat resolves to calm, AP is completely restored, taking no effort from the characters. Good. I like that. I like that. I wonder if there are abilities, maybe some of the knights or the Corsorian knights or the dog girls that can recover AP faster. or in the middle of combat, I wonder. But it's not strictly necessary because it all comes back after combat. But I'm curious. I'm curious if there's ways to tighten up your armor during combat to bring it up. I guess we'll see. But okay, overall though, I like this. My worry was that you were getting your armor actually destroyed. That's not the kind of game I'm signing up for here. But I do agree with the concept and idea of what's happening there. So good move on that. No quarrel from me there. Out of action and death. Now you go. See, this is what you should have done a page ago. This is what you should have done 1 page ago. Out of action, OOA. Now we know what that means. Now we can refer to it as OOA for the rest of our, let's see, how many pages are we looking at here? Oh, nearly 300 pages. Nearly 300 pages. I'm being mean. I'm sorry. I'm the worst. I love you. I love this game. I'm having fun with it. But I'm being a dick. If a character reaches 0 8 points, they are out of action. Additional damage from the attack that knocked them out of 8 does not carry over. Okay, so once you hit 0, even if you were at 1 and you got hit with 10 HP, you're just down to 0. You're not down to -9. Exactly. A player with 3 HP who is hit for 3 damage is just as much trouble as if they were hit for 17 damage. Either way, you're reduced to 0 and you're out of action. Cool. Character that's out of action is not dead, nor are they necessarily unconscious, but they are generally incapacitated. Out of action character cannot generally take move actions, main actions, reactions, free actions, attack, defend, blah, 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 except as dictated by their class's unique out of action ability. So classes do have a unique out of action ability. We will get to those once we get to the classes. An out-of-action character automatically fails defense rolls. Out-of-action character can only do actions listed in their abilities for being out of action. Okay. I actually like that. It means even if you're taken out of action, even if you go down, there's still a thing you can do. I wonder what those things are, and we'll take a look at them shortly. But I like that even if you go out of combat, you're not out of the game entirely. There's still some way you can influence. Let's see. Ooh, okay, and then once you're out of action, if they still keep banging on you, if you're still hitting you, if you're still taking damage, now they're doing ability score damage, which is right here on the other page. And apparently that's important enough to cover. Yeah, the root for being rousing an out-of-action character. An out-of-action character can be roused by a player or NPC at the end of combat. Rousing a character stabilizes them and addresses whatever caused them to go out of action. Tourniquet might be tied around bleeding limb. Roused character returns to 1 HP, but any ability score damage they have taken remains. Cat, could you not? Let's see. In addition, whichever ability failed in the check that caused them to go out of action also takes 1 point of damage. So that's the penalty for going out of action. In addition to the HP, and you have to recover HP and all that, of course. But if you go to the point where you got knocked out, so if the thing that knocked you down, you defended against it with strength, then your strength goes down, takes 1 point of damage. If you defend against something with speed and fail, then your speed takes 1 point of damage. I guess if there are mental attacks, knowledge or will, then likewise, right? Interesting. Because yeah, it doesn't kill a character, but it does imply the significant harm has been done. The kind of harm that can have expected. So recovering ability score damage. Before we get to the rest of them, so how do we get that back? How badly are you fucked, right? When a character receives ability score damage, that damage does not go away on its own. A character can only heal ability score damage through receiving patchworking from a patchworker. For specifics about recovering ability score damage. Okay, so at that point, you need healing. Either a patchworker in your party, or I guess an NPC patchworker, and then that becomes plot. So, okay, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with. This is like you got, hit bad, and now you need assistance. Like that I'm okay with. Yeah, this is cool. NPCs from NPCs are reduced to 0 HP up to GM's discretion whether the target's incapacitated or killed. Cool. And players can say if this is to cast. Okay, cool. I like that. It's pretty straightforward. Leaves it completely to the player or the GM as needed. No need to worry, or like in some games where it's like, oh, I'm attacking with this weapon. Oh, well, in that case, it's always lethal. Like you cannot help but kill people, which that's not how it's annoying. It's annoying, right? So let's see here. Cool. Pretty straightforward. All right. Statuses, knocked down. That's if you're... Okay, this is basically being knocked prone. And what that means for you... Here's the status. Caught, catch, trapped in a device or otherwise... Okay, so basically you are trapped, effectively. Caught or catch. So this cannot make... Okay, so basically you are caught. You cannot move until you are uncaught. Pretty straightforward. Frightened. Something terrifying. After being frightened, you have to make 2 will checks at the beginning of each of your turn. 1. Huh. Okay, cool. So basically at the beginning of each turn, you make 2 will checks. 1 for whether you can move or not, and 1 for whether you can act or not. And if you fail both, then you can do nothing except run away. Interesting. I kind of dig that approach, because it doesn't, even frightened, you might still be able to like lash out or like move strategically even in the fear. I dig that. Okay, cool. Then paralyzed, you're capable of taking that full paralyzation. Stunned, you spend your next turn effectively paralyzed, except for defense rolls. Paralysis, being paralyzed. Yeah, you don't really get to defend, especially from close. Okay, cool. And then out of action is out of action. All right, nothing too crazy here. I like that approach to being frightened. I like that little bit there. Environmental hazards. All right, so it's just being falling damage. It's real D&D. That feels real D&D. Getting thrown. Okay, I like that there's a specific damage for that, especially because there is a dog's wheel, basically a motorcycle or vehicle. Like there is vehicular combat, and there being a damage rating for falling off that vehicle. Good. Fire, water, you can't swim in armor. Drowning is bad, and if you keep drowning, it continues being bad. Cool. Reputation. This is going to be important because as we mentioned earlier, this game seems to care a lot about your reputation with other groups. So let's see how that goes. Reputation is everything in Penumbra City and is as important to character progression as leveling up. Reputation affects the default disposition of NPCs to the characters and determines the character's access to goods and services. Reputation with coalitions is measured on a scale of -4 to 4. Having favor with a faction can bump a character's effective reputation with that faction up to 5. The higher a reputation is, the harder it is to improve it. The lower a reputation is, the harder it is to reduce it. Reputation is held with coalitions, not individuals or factions, but reputation is improved by gaining favor from multiple factions within a coalition. So you can gain favor with different factions or others' reputation, favors, characters' favoritism, reputation. Okay. So you have a reputation with the coalition itself. So with the revolutionists, with the bulwark, with the reasonable, but you can also gain favor with specific factions within a coalition. And if you have favor within a coalition with a specific faction, then they will treat you better than maybe the rest of the faction will, or the rest of the coalition will, which is cool. Cool, I like that. It makes it a little bit more grainy. Favors gained from a faction performing a notable act or deed for that faction. Factions whom an individual has favor that are part of a coalition that the character has a negative or neutral reputation will treat the party as though they have a reputation of 1. So it's even possible to have a good reputation with a faction, but it does cap it out. You're never going to be their best friend if the rest of the coalition hates you. Cool, dig it. Let's see here. Gaining favor with a faction is no easy task. Might not be gained by dealing with an infestation of monstrous centipedes in a basement, but favor might be gained by rescuing a faction's member who was arrested by the Kingsmen. As a guide for GMs, favor is something that can be gained through completing an entire adventure that revolves around a faction, not any of the smaller component parts. Right, because with the levels being -4 to +4, it's 4. So yeah, every step raised there is going to have to be fairly intense, right? So okay, I like that guidance. Like you want to raise your reputation with a faction by a whole point. Cool. That's gonna be that's the adventure. That's the thing that we're doing. All right, neat way to do it. Exactly. Let's see. Favor can be lost by doing something harmful to a faction the character has favor with. The party rescue a dog girl from the cops, then they might gain favor with the dog girls. Then they turn around and give the dog's wheel they were gifted by the dog girls to the Lords of New Order. They might immediately lose that favor. So, all right, good to know. Good to know. Home faction. Characters each start as part of a home faction that is tied to their class. Character always has favor with their home faction. So the dogs girls always have favor with the dogs girls. Cool. Fair enough. Improving reputation. When a character has favor with 4 different factions within a coalition, the reputation with the coalition goes up by 1 point. Wow. So building coalitions and building favors, like, let's see how much. I mean, it's gotta come with good benefits, because this is a lot of work. This is coalition building in this game. I mean, I like it. Let me be very clear. I actually really like that there is a system to keep track of coalition building within a faction, and then you have to help multiple factions within a coalition to actually raise your reputation with that whole coalition. I like that. And that can be, because that's a campaign. That's your campaign right there, coalition building. You want to improve your reputation with all the various factions within, say, the revolutionists, and as those favors come through and you do these tasks, and these tasks become more and more dangerous and interesting as you go up in reputation with the various factions, until you are the heroes of the revolutionists of this entire coalition. That's a campaign. You are giving me a campaign structure and a system for tracking my progress within a campaign, and I fucking love it. But I'm curious to see what these scores translate to in terms of, like, all right, so what do my players get? Other than, I guess, access to those factions, I guess, and access to progressing the quest, which everybody loves, right? But also stuff, right? Do I get powers? Do I get equipment? What perks do the players get as these numbers go up? And I guess we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully there's stuff. Let's see what we get for that. Because while I love this as a tracking system, in order for my players to sort of be on board, they're going to want rewards. They're going to want bennies. They're going to want toys in exchange for putting in all this work, right? So let's see. So improving reputation, gaining 1 point of reputation. The factors with whom the character has favor resets, except their home faction, as the rest of the coalition's opinion of the character has caught up with the faction. Interesting. Okay, because favor is just like either you have favor or you don't. And if your reputation with, for example, the revolutionists is by default 1, but you have favor with the dog girls, for example, then they will treat you as if you were reputation 2. But that's it. You're not going to get them to treat you as reputation 3 or reputation 4. In fact, if you want to raise your reputation further, you have to help out the other people in the coalition. So you have to find, say, the children or the Eridani Foundation and gain favor with them. And once you've gained favor with 4 of them, then your coalition reputation goes up from 1 to 2, and then it's not then the dog girls don't treat you as 3. Now everybody treats you as 2, and now you would have to gain additional favor, gain a new favor, gain favor again with the dog girls to get them to treat you as if you had at a 3. I like that. I dig that, because once now they've caught up, like, you're no longer, like, you are in favor by default. You are now always at 2. You can't lose that. Well, you can't lose that, but you know what I mean. So okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And again, it's that because I thought for a second, like, oh, what if I just focus on one specific faction and just gain favor with them multiple times? Will that help me? It's like, no. You only really gain the favor with a faction once, and then that's it. It's a yes, no. It's not a number. Let's see, gotta go do dishes and such. She'll be in the background. My name is response. No worries, no worries. Thanks. I am wonderful to wash dishes with. In fact, I should market my videos as that. I should market my videos as good for doing your dishes too. That's a marketing thing. I'm gonna write that down. Let's see here. So, okay, so that's how you improve. Let's see, character can only improve the reputation with a custom perfect shore content. Exactly. A character can only improve the reputation with a coalition up to 4. Gaining access to a faction service and equipment that require a reputation of 5 can only be done by having a reputation of 4 with a coalition and favor with the faction that offers those services or equipment, which brings the character's effective reputation with that favor up to level 5. Cool. So apparently there is stuff you gain access to. Excellent. Losing reputation. Reputation is lost by acting against the interests of a coalition or the factions within it. Which actions result in lost reputation is up to the GM. I'm assuming there's going to be some guidance as we learn more about the factions later. For instance, reputation should not be lost for small things like getting a borrowed dog's wheel destroyed, or getting caught harvesting flesh for patchworking in public, or offending a high-ranking member of a faction. However, if a party kills the leader of a faction or disrupts major plans, then it is likely 1 point of reputation will be lost with the coalition. All right. In addition, repeated acts of minor convenience might eventually lead to the loss of reputations. I guess probably minor inconvenience is what was meant there. General tip for GMs: players should be somewhat aware of particular actions' potential to reduce their reputation. Okay, yeah. It's not pretty straightforward. It's just like some good guidance. It's like, hey, these numbers should not be flickering constantly, right? It should be losing or gaining reputation is a thing that happens. It's a decision that was made, and it's a proper action that is taken. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. And then individually based. Reputation and favor are held individually by characters, not by the collective party. Most of the time, though, favor and reputation are earned collectively by a party going on adventures together. A GM at their discretion might have individual characters lose or gain favor and reputation due to their individual deeds. Okay, so good to know as well. Yeah, I mean, every character will have their own like starting reputations. Like the gas lampers here have their starting reputations with the various factions. So that's going to differ from character to character. So yeah, no, that makes sense that each character is tracking their own individually. The party as a whole might have also a specific reputation, but individuals are responsible for their own actions. Cool. And in fact, here's your guidance. Here's your guidance: groups with mixed reputation. So what happens if there is different but mostly positive, different but mostly negative? Yeah, exactly. The lowest reputation is, so that people always assume the worst, and people have a hard time seeing the best. So the one, yeah. So you have to pick one. You have to pick the one who leads the negotiating is the one whose reputation to go with makes strength, and that's why you would have, for example, a lordling asking a lordling to lead negotiations. Yeah, okay, but fine enough. Okay, here we go. If you've got mixed, positive and negative, a group receives both positive and negative actions. The sum of the lowest reputation, the highest reputation determines. Oh, the sum of the lowest and the highest determines how the group is treated. However, in these instances, the character with a positive reputation should not necessarily be mistreated by the faction. The individual with a positive reputation should still be treated with appropriate disposition. They might, however, be treated with skepticism or at least confusion. Okay, that makes sense. So let's say we've got somebody who is going in there with a reputation of 2, but they're coming in with a known enemy of the clan who has a reputation of -3 with them. -3, 2, so that's an effective reputation of -1. So that's how they're going to generally approach the pair, right? As a -1. But the person who has the 2 reputation solo, even though they're effectively -1 for whatever the negotiation is, they're not going to be treated 100% as a -1, right? They're still going to be treated as a friend, as somebody who has a favor with that clan or with that faction. But whatever negotiation is still effectively at a -1 because you brought an enemy. What the fuck? So, okay, cool. I get that. Makes sense. Changing a faction's coalition. Penumbra City is a game of building community even across coalition allegiances. A faction that a party has favor with can be lured into switching coalitions. For example, a player can play as a Fungalian who is aligned with the Revolutionists, but is a member of the Esteemed who are part of the Reasonable. The Fungalian could try to shift the Esteemed's allegiance. What it takes to shift the allegiances of a faction is at the discretion of a GM beyond the party having favor with that faction, but it should be a major undertaking. So that's actually dope. I like that it does leave the door open, even if it's mostly just like a GM's discretion kind of thing. But I like that that is an option, that you could have a party work towards literally having a faction move from one coalition to another. I really like that. All right, let's see here. Reputation disposition scale. All right, so that's just your general scale of what that means. So friendly, accepted, loved, honored, disliked, despised, hunted, mortal enemy. Cool. So equipment and services. So let's see. At this point, services is a what you need chapter. Right. Factions are happy to offer goods and services to characters with whom they have positive reputation. A character's reputation determines the quality of goods, level, service, and capacity to which the NPCs can be employed. Equipment like weapons, food, tools, vehicles, and armor has different quality levels: improvised, basic, fine, fancy, and masterwork. Services include things like healing, guidance, information, rituals, and aid in battle. Equipment and services, even requested with appropriate reputation, are offered within reason. For example, a party might request 1,000 swords from the Corsori, but the Corsori probably don't have 1,000 swords to lend. Factions do not have bottomless amounts of any given item, and some requests, especially repeated requests or requests without good reason, might cause a faction to feel like they are being taken advantage of. This goes to character progression here. Wait, before we go to character progression, which I do actually want to go through. Maintaining the higher character's reputation is within a given coalition, the more work the characters likely have to do. Okay, so yeah, so it's work. I get it. This is pretty straightforward. The more you have reputation and you have favor with them, the more they're going to demand of you. That's pretty straightforward. I dig it. Now, where do we get, maybe, is there a section? I wish they would tell you for more information, see the services section. Okay, services section of what you need chapter. That should have page numbers. What you need, game mechanics, what you need, equipment, 182, services, 211. I don't know if this is going to be tied to factions. I have a feeling it's going to be more generic. Services, different levels. Okay, no, actually no. Maybe I was wrong. I am pleasantly surprised to have been proven wrong. Aid. At different levels of reputation, members of factions will be willing to accompany adventuring parties to different levels of risk. These dynamics are ultimately up to the discretion of the GM, but below is a helpful guide for equating reputation level to NPC willingness to accompany the party into danger. NPCs who are mistreated are expected to add as cannon fodder. Okay, so these are the kind of things, the kind of services you can get from a faction based on your reputation with them. So at reputation 0, verbal or written information about an area and its dangers as long as they have a decent social interaction or exchange. Okay, so basically your neutral interaction. Info or services in exchange for, some kind of reward. Verbal or written for reputation 1, verbal or written information about an area and its dangers without necessarily asking for much in return. Some factions will provide guides at this level as long as there is no danger. So basic guide services. As will probably not help for more than a few hours. Guides might leave, the trip becomes dangerous. Okay, cool. Reputation 2, provide a guide or companion at this level as long as the danger has minimal danger. Companion will not put themselves in harm's way, but they will provide support if it looks like the fight will be lost. Companion might run. Okay, basic standard. Just somebody who's willing to take a risk, but is not there to protect your party. Reputation 3, at this point, you might be willing to put themselves in danger if it is for a cause they support. 1 or 2 companions might guide and aid a party in combat no matter the result or danger for a prolonged period. Okay, cool. So you're going to have a friend in your group. Then let's see. Many members of a faction at level 4 will support a party on a long and dangerous adventure as long as you are free. At this point, you are effectively part of the faction. In 5, it's that level that you can only get to. You are basically in charge of the faction at that point. So okay, I like that. So those are the basics. So basically, it's just up to the GM. Yeah, the basic levels of what they can do for you. And since there are all these levels, basic, fine, fancy, and masterwork, I'm guessing if like for example, the difference engines, right? These are the computers. I'm not going to go into detail on them yet. We need to go back. But the basic, fine, fancy, and masterwork. So I'm assuming, like for example, you have a level 0 with the clackers. Wait, are they a faction? Let's see, are they a faction? Go back to the factions. I think they were, right? The Children, the Corsoria, the Dog Girls, Aaron, the Fraternal Soror, the Gas Lampers, Industrial Workers of Harrow. They might be part of the Industrial Workers, or the Areni. The Areni, because the Areni also run the Plaza, and the Plaza is where the clackers keep the difference engines. Anyway, so let's say you are level 1 with the Areni, so they would probably give you access to a basic level difference engine, then a level 2 fine, level 3 fancy, and level 4 masterwork. That makes more sense. Okay, those are, I'm just like, okay, yeah, food based on the reputation. Okay, here we go. I'm liking, okay, these are actual numbers. This is what I was worried about that we weren't going to see, but I am seeing it. Good job. I like it, Penumbra City. Well done. That here are actual numbers. So healing, patchworking. So if you have reputation with 1, they might heal a total of 10 HP for a party per day. Without, you have to bring your own donor material. Or reputation 3, they will provide donor material and up to 50 HP for a party per day. So again, the more reputation you have, the more. So this is good. These are specific numbers and specific things that you can get from a faction. Again, GM's discretion. Some factions will probably be able to provide more than others, but I dig this. This is exactly what I was hoping to find. If anything, if I have any complaint, which I don't really, it would be more. Give me more. Give me more of that. But I like this. I like this, and I like that. Yeah, the things have different levels here. But yeah, this is the stuff. This stuff tied to reputation. And I'm glad it's here. I'm glad it's here. We have actual numbers. That is exactly what we wanted to see. Perfect. Now I like this even better. Overall, this system, there's a system for gaining and managing reputation. It is a big part of the game, and it is actually baked into the game system. It is not merely, in the setting. Because there are some games that I have worked on like that, like Hometown Magic and Jesus Christ, Seeker's Call, which have worlds where I intend for there to be a more mutual aid kind of approach and a more community building kind of game. But honestly, the mechanics are not there. I haven't taken the time to do it. This is again why these games are not. They're cheap. They're free. They're not finished. They are first scrabbling attempts at making a game of myself. So I am barely a game maker on my own. But the more I read about them, the more I learn. The more I maybe someday will finally make that fantasy heartbreaker of my own. Anyway, long story short, I really like what they're doing here, with there actually being a system in place for this coalition building gameplay that they want to encourage, and there are in fact in-game mechanical benefits to the players for doing it. It increases the things they can do and the things they can get away with within the game, and hopefully leading them to do bigger and bigger moves within this whole revolution and row fight the power. Right? So I'm a big fan of this, big fan of all of this that I've just seen. So with that, the last, it's concrete, which is very helpful. Exactly, Strugglebus. Exactly. So let's go ahead and then take a quick look at character progression. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thankfully, it's just 2 pages. And then we actually can see the classes. So cool, because tomorrow, most likely, I'll hop back on probably earlier in the day. It took me longer than expected to kind of set all this up, but now that it's set up once, it's good. It's good. It's set up until further notice. So tomorrow I'll probably just dive right into the classes because I'm real curious. Look at this. Look at this. I love the art for the clackers. We haven't seen a lot of art in this book, which fine. I know how hard it is. So not knocking this too much, but I can't help but wish there was more. But it is what it is. But the art that we do get, lovely. I love the style of it, and I love her. I love her. She is perfect in every way. I can't wait to meet her tomorrow. So let's just focus on the character progression for these last 8 minutes by now, or less. No, 6.5 minutes. Deciding when the party's level progresses, also known as leveling up, is at the discretion of so this milestone progression basically. Good guideline for leveling up is when the party has reached a milestone within the campaign after several adventures. Leveling up should, if narratively applicable, be structured around downtime. Players and GMs should discuss together what their expectations and guidelines are for leveling up. When characters advance in level, the following things are affected. So before I get to that, I like the idea. I don't know if I don't know if there's more of a GM's section later or not, but I kind of dig the idea of, since there are 5 levels in this game, and there are the 5 levels of reputation, making character progression roughly match the reputation you have, right, with your main faction. I'm assuming in 99% of games that would be the revolutionists. So it feels like, yeah, once you start at level 1 and your reputation with the revolutionists is basically at level 1, and once you've done enough work to, you've gained favor with at least 4 of the factions within the coalition, enough to then make your reputation with the coalition a proper 2, that's probably around the time that you should be as characters going up to level 2. And then once you hit reputation 3, level 3, reputation 4, level 4, and then at that point level 5 would probably be kind of final favors and final like coalition building and getting ready for whatever the denouement, the highlight, the peak of the campaign is going to be. Because once you hit level 5, you're at the peak of your power within this game. And you should have, that's when you're probably going to want to release the final epic ending to whatever story you've been telling. The God King should hopefully fall, right? So that's how I would approach it. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the right one. As we'll see as we go, but that's how it feels like it should be. So anytime you level up, you gain more hit points. The character class tells how many hit points you get. Okay, we'll see that tomorrow with the character classes. Anytime you gain a level, there's a chance that all their ability scores will improve. Whether a score improves or not is based on making an ability score progression check for each ability. These checks work in the opposite way as most checks. If the player rolls above but not equal to their current ability score, their ability score goes up by 1. Player rolls for each ability score. Each class offers 1 or more ability scores the character rolls with advantage on. Again, this advantage is inverted and the character takes the highest number roll. Interesting. So you don't get automatically... Okay, so that's incentivizing 2 things. 1, your class is going to have a stat that they actually roll with advantage on. So they have a better stat of raising, a better chance of raising that stat. But I suspect that's also probably going to be the stat, right? Your character's main stat. So it's probably already going to be high. So the higher your stat is, the harder it is to raise it. So at the same time, it also incentivizes bumping up your lower stats, because you have a higher chance of that working with a single roll. But there's still a chance that you might go up a level and not get anything. And that, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like there should be sort of basic, like even if you fail the check, you still get something, especially since there's only going to be at most 5 times in your character's life where this happens, and everything is based, all rolls are based around ability scores. So the fact that there's no other way to raise it except to hope it races during a character level up, that feels weird. I don't know how I feel about that. I would need to see it in practice, and also need to see, as we look through the rest of the book, how I feel about the checks, right? How I feel about just going up in power, in level, and an ability, how the checks are going to feel. Yeah, I'm unsure about that. But all right, cool. Approaching it anyway, taking it as it is. Rules as written. There's that. Proficiencies. After they've rolled to improve their ability scores, if they want to, a player can make one knowledge check. So again, this is favoring people who already have a higher knowledge, which is fine, but also means that sounds like, yeah, if you failed, you don't get anything. Again, I feel weird about that. I feel like it should be you get something by default, and then you can roll to see if you get more. That's how I feel a level up should be. I don't know if I would house rule it that way. Again, would need to see how it plays. And I do tend to err on the side of give the players more power. And maybe that's not what we're going for here, but it feels weird for me to have a level up procedure where there is a chance that if I roll poorly during my level up, I don't get anything, right? Maybe just one hit point. I'm guessing probably hit points is also probably a roll. In fact, we can look real quick. Let me see. We have the starting reputation, ability score, HP. No, okay, so it's not even a roll. It's just a number. Just a number. You just add 1 HP. So you really don't gain a lot of HP as you level up. Leveling up is not... Yeah, it mostly comes with getting, which is what I'm going to say, the progression abilities. Mostly gets new abilities, but stats-wise, yeah, I guess you're not really meant to gain a lot of stat progression in this game, it feels like. Okay, good to know. I mean, if that's what the approach they're taking, that's the approach they're taking. So long as it's balanced throughout the book, it's fine. So I guess, again, once we look at the classes, and then we'll look at the monsters a bit, and we'll see how that feels, because I really do want to do that comparison between a level 1 character or group of characters against your basic, like, giant rat, versus a level 4 or 5 group of characters versus, like, an angel or whatever the more powerful monsters in this are. So I'm looking forward to doing that hopefully tomorrow. But yeah, so again, you roll to see if you might learn something, proficiency, and it's got to be something that you experienced during the course, that you were exposed to during the course of the adventure, and you can't use it to learn another class's ability. That's fine. That's normal. That's good to actually point out. Then you got your actual character progression abilities, which are the things that you get as a character from your class. You start with a bunch of abilities already. We'll see those tomorrow. And then there are progression abilities, which you gain as you level up. And yeah, and then that's it. Narrative ends. Although there's no limit set on how many levels a character can grow, Penumbra City is designed around characters capping at level 5. Players push to progress beyond level 5. They can work with their GMs to find additional ways to advance. Players should work with their GMs to find narratively appropriate ways to retire their characters. So yeah, it really is kind of meant to be. Once you hit that level cap, your story is over. Makes sense. And I guess, again, once we see the rest of this, we'll see how well this fits. I have my reservations about this whole rolling to gain ability scores and proficiencies. But again, if the game is meant to remain low powered throughout all of it, then I guess that's fine. But it rankles me. I as a player would probably not feel great if I leveled up and I failed to raise an ability score or a proficiency. I didn't get either one of those. I still get my 1 hit point, I guess, depending on the character class, and my new character class ability, which from what I've seen, very little of so far, but I've seen are mostly very cool, so cool that, but I would feel weird about this. I don't know. I feel like if I were to run this, let's see how the rest of the book treats us. But my instinct is to house rule that no, you gain 1 ability score by default, and you gain 1 proficiency by default, and if you wish, you can roll to see if you get something extra on both. That I think I would be more okay with. The idea being that you still get something, especially if there's only 5 level ups in this whole game. They should feel special, and I feel like that they would be spoiled if I rolled poorly during my level up. You know, that part feels a little weird. So but we'll see how that goes. But on that note, Jesus Christ, I feel like the card is actually earlier on than when it started. But here we go. Continues to be and will be Penumbra City, which I will continue checking out tomorrow. For today, however, I'm done. Let's see. If the system is lethal and meant to chew through characters, I can understand the chance of increases. Also, equipment progression may be a thing. Exactly. We haven't gotten yet to equipment progression. Clearly, the coalition building and faction building, you get tangible benefits from that. So that also, like, you're leveling up in ways beyond just your character levels. So definitely that's there. That might be providing an additional level of balance that I'm not quite seeing yet in that level up. So again, just the nature of it still rankles me at base. But I'm not writing it off. I still overall very much like what I see. Again, I am legitimately impressed and excited about the coalition building and faction building system and how that ties in. I'm excited to see more of that, and I'm definitely excited to actually dive in tomorrow to the actual character classes.